Do you guys like dragons? Because I like dragons. And it's a good job because we have a lot of dragons in this set. Hey guys, this is Game of Welcome to another Pokemon Trading Card Game History video. This time we're on to Dragons Exalted, the final of the EX series of sets, I suppose. Boundaries Crossed does not have it here, so yeah. We also have Dragon Vault as well because it's just a little all holofoil mini set thing. I think this is the first time we've actually seen this in the TCG, where we've had a tiny little extra set. It's mostly just to celebrate the fact that dragons are making their official introduction as a new type in the TCG. First new type we've had since Neo Genesis, actually, right? Darkness and Metal type was the in thing. But nah, we've got dragons now, and they kind of follow the same sort of pattern as what we've seen before. You know, they are their own type, but they have dual colors just based on the Pokemon itself. So Rayquaza over here needs lightning and fire energy. The Latios needs water and psychic. We've seen these traits before. They haven't always been the same energy. Latios in particular was grass and lightning when it first came out. But the idea is still the same. And ultimately that makes them kind of hard to play. But some of them are actually really good, and I mean, a lot of them in this actual main set are pretty substantial and worth building around, so despite their restrictions, we shall say. As far as their actual typing goes, they are weak to themselves in this current generation, and they don't have any resistance. So there's no dual resistance stuff like there used to be, say Dragonite EX being resistant to grass and fighting. There's nothing like that. It's just you counter a dragon with a different dragon, as you probably would expect from the video games around this time. Fairy didn't get introduced until Gen 6 after all, so yeah. As far as the other stuff in this set goes, there's quite a few cool concepts in here. This set is, with rotation especially, this set is a lot more sort of diverse in the number of decks you can make, even if the consistency is down a fair bit compared to what it was in the previous set, thanks to the removal of a ton of our supporters and stuff. And one thing it doesn't do is give us any new supporters. There are 4 item cards in this set, and 2 special energy, and that is it. So yeah. Dragon Vault itself also introduces 1 new item as well in the first ticket. We'll get to that in a little bit. But yeah, unfortunately the vault itself is not super good, so we can very quick fire go through some of the stuff here, although the cards do look very pretty, if nothing else. So I mean, look at this. If you have this as a holofoil in real life, the colors just absolutely pop. It's kind of awesome to see. But that is not what we have here. So are there any cards in this mini set that are okay? Salamence makes a good meme deck alongside the Honchkrow we'll look at, and the Hooligan's Gym and Cast from before. I mentioned this in the Dark Explorers video, but essentially when you have a Salamence in play, you can make it so the opponent discards cards from their hand until they have 4 left. Then if you flip the heads on the Hooligan's Gym and Cast supporter, you can make them discard, I think it's discard 3 more? No, they shuffle them away. It's like you shuffle away 3 more cards out of their hand, and then the Honchkrow we'll talk about discards the last card out of their hand and leaves them with nothing. Funny, but it's on stage 2, and the basics are not inspiring here. Heavy Ball searchable, at least for Shalgon, so I guess there's that, but Salamence itself is not Heavy Ball searchable, so rip. The Latias is technically kind of cool, but we've seen this effect before and it didn't do anything. 1 colorless energy to attach a basic energy from your discard to one of your bench Pokemon. That is really nice in theory, especially when we have Ultra Ball and Juniper now, but it's only replacing itself, and it's only got 100 HP, and it doesn't start your plays. We've got a play starter in this, or at least a search starter in this set that we'll talk about. This just doesn't do it, so that's a bit of a shame. Rayquaza is just a reprint of the one that's in the main set, because the one in the main set was a secret rare, being a shiny one, so it was very hard to get hold of. And yeah, this one we'll talk about when we get to the actual set. And the only other thing worth noting is potentially Kyurem. Not this set really, because its attacks are too expensive for this set, but you're really looking at Blizzard here. For 1 water, 1 psychic, 2 colorless, you do 90, which when doubled is enough to KO the Dragon EXs in this set as well. And you do 10 damage to each of the opponent's bench. alright. You know, it's a more forward version of Glaciate, I guess, where it doesn't do the spread damage, but it does do the basic damage. It's really only because it's a dragon type that you could even consider this, but yeah, it's still pretty awkward, to be honest. However, when we get Blastoise, you could at least charge it up, and if you really need an answer to the dragon decks from this set, you could probably do worse. I think you could do better, but you could probably do worse. The only item in here is First Ticket, which is effectively Sableye Overeager. If you have this in your opening hand, you can play this card out of your hand, and you go first guaranteed. That is very powerful, but it means then that you have to play 4 of this basically in order to have a chance of getting it, and you don't guarantee that you start with it obviously, and you start with 1 fewer card in hand, and then you've got 3 bricks in the deck as well. You hopefully, I guess you could prize a few of them so you don't have them in the deck to draw, but it's a very, very risky card to play, and I don't think very many decks want to go first so badly that they want to brick themselves to do so. There are a couple you could justify it in though. Darkrai comes to mind, but yeah, it's a bit rough. As far as the other items, since there are so few of them in here, Devolution Spray is a really cool idea. This is, I think, Hyper Devolution Spray is what it was in Gen 2. It's the same artwork, I think, as well, where you devolve 1 of your evolution cards and put the highest stage back into your hand. Really helpful for abusing coming into play powers, and we'll see 1 of those in this set, but the Amoonguss was also one that we could have used before, so that's kind of cool. Giant Cape is a tool card that gives you plus 20 HP on the Pokemon it's on. This is technically worse Eviolite because it's, you know, if you get hit twice, it's effectively 10 damage reduction, and if the opponent puts you down to 20 HP, then they discard this tool, then they get a KO during their turn, which is annoying. But it can also be used on stuff that isn't a basic Pokemon, which is pretty important. Rescue Scarf is the other tool in this set. If you remember Rescue Energy, this is basically the same thing as that, but just on the tool instead now. If the Pokemon this card is attached to is KO'd by damage, then you put that Pokemon into the hand. It doesn't actually have to be KO'd by the opponent's attack, so technically if you self-destructed, you'd be able to put the Pokemon back in hand. That's kind of cool, I guess. Yeah, it's useful, obviously, if you're playing an evolution deck, especially you like this card, because it lets you bring the Evo back into hand, and you could just evolve like a basic you put down the previous turn. So that's neat. Both of these cards and Eviolite in general have to deal with Tool Scrapper in the format now though. Choose up to 2 Pokemon tools in play on either side of the field and discard them. There are occasions where you'll want to discard your own tools, apart from just attaching a different tool. The main one is the Garbodor in this set, which we'll get to. This was a necessary card to print because of that Garbodor, and yeah, thankfully they did, because this isn't a Gen 3 situation where we get a Floodgate and no outs to the Floodgate printed, right? So yeah. The 2 special energy that we don't have Rainbow Energy anymore, but we do have Blend Energies coming in here. These are Colorless Energy in the hand, but they provide 4 different types of energy when in play. Psychic, Fire, Grass, and Dark for this one, and then the second one is Metal, Water, Lightning, and Fighting. So you don't get a universal hit here, but these do provide several different types of energy and can merge several different strategies together. Water and Fighting is quite a nice one in general. The metal part of this means you can use it with Klinklang if you want to as well, which is pretty solid. And the dark part here means you can use it with the Hydreigon we'll talk about in this set too, which is very nice. In general, the Fire Dark Blend Energy is not quite as useful right now, but later on it's going to be a bit more important, and it does mean that you can attack with Shaman as well, which is quite nice. Like Shaman EX in a Dark deck could get played now, so it does provide some versatility, which is pretty good. As far as the EXs go, there's some really interesting stuff within this. Ho-Oh EX is, I think, the only EX in this block that has 160 HP, which is unique if nothing else. Not great, but, you know, it's there. Its Rainbow Burn attack is something that Sai was saying, oh, you've got to use this now because it's Rainbow Burn. 3 colorless energy, 20 damage, plus 20 for each different type of basic energy that's on this Pokemon. It's nowhere near as good as it used to be, right? Because it's basically the same number. It's like technically 20 more damage than what Ho-Oh from Secret Wonders did, but that Ho-Oh was a non-EX. It had a really potentially good power that you could keep it in play. We had a Togekiss that could get cards onto it as well. This one has its own ability that can technically help though. Rebirth once during your turn before you attack. If this is in the discard pile, flip a coin. If heads, put it onto the bench and attach 3 different types of basic energy from your discard to this Pokemon. So it technically gets itself powered up really easily, which is nice, but it's also competing in a Mewtwo block, which is not great for it as an attacker. But what it does do is it sets up energy on the board that you can use Energy Switch in order to move where you want it. We don't have the Shaman anymore, so we can't Celebration Wind to move it all the way in one go. But if you get one Ho-Oh into play, that's 3 basic energy that you can then Energy Switch away with whatever attacker you want. So there is a deck for it. Puka famously won like 5 city championships in a row undefeated with this card, so it's definitely got potential, and I have adapted Puka's deck, so we might end up playing Ho-Oh by the end of this. Who knows? It's pretty cool. Speaking of cool stuff, one we didn't get to play last time round because we were in draft rules at the time is Mew EX. Capital this time, but it's literally the same card, just with, I think, a different actual attack on it. 120 HP, very frail, 1 retreat cost, psychic type, so it could technically be used in the Mewtwo War here, so long as its ability is in play. Its attack lets you shift your energy around as much as you want, but it's 120 HP dude, so you really don't want to do that. But kind of like Mew Prime, but better. This Mew, its versatile ability, the same as it was in the old Mew EX, lets you copy any attack that's in play, but you need the energy to use that attack. Decks can use this for a variety of different reasons. The most degenerate one, I suppose, is Excelgor's deck and cover, which then doesn't remove the Excelgor from play, you just get a Mew and the DCE back into the deck, which is great. But you can also do some fun stuff like copy 1 energy attacks that are in play. You could copy the opponent's X-Ball if you want. You don't have to play Mewtwo in the deck to have that option. You can copy your own stuff like Night Spears if you want a different typing to go after. Say if the opponent's playing a ton of Terrakion, well, maybe the Mew is what you need for that, right? Yeah, Psychic type is not the strongest type out there, but it's certainly better than, say, being resisted on your main hit, right? So there's some use to it, for sure. Terrakion EX is not great at the moment because it's just a little bit too expensive, and being an EX, it's a bit too vulnerable compared to the base Terrakion. It doesn't really add any damage to it, which is why it's kind of not great, but it will be useful when Victini EX comes out, because Victini Terrakion is actually a pretty decent deck. 180 HP on the tanky side for EXs, 3 energy retreat costs, so it's a little bit quicker than the base Terrakion, but it's still heavy ball searchable, so it's still got some utility in this format. Rock Tumble for Fighting and Colorless does 50 and ignores resistance, kind of okay against Tornadus EX I suppose. And Pump Up Smash, the main attack, 2 Fighting and the Colorless to do 90, and you attach 2 basic energy from your hand to your bench in any way that you like. So once you get 1, it's kind of like Entei in a way, where it's like once you get 1 of these going, you can get the others going as well. But the difference is that Entei accelerated only 1 energy, but from the discard pile, whereas this one accelerates 2 from the hand. That means that if you want to do the max potion stuff with this, you are going to have to also play energy retrieval to get the energy back, which is a little bit annoying. But the plus is that fighting is a much better type to be in than fire. So you get to do the Pump Up Smash versus Darkrai and one-shot them. So yeah, plus and minus, I suppose. This guy, Mr. Registeel, honestly, not a huge fan. It's funny actually because this exact attack actually got reprinted as in Iron Treads EX in the most recent like Scarlet Violet set that's coming out Exactly as it is here too, which is really stupid. 180 HP, super tanky. Metal doesn't really matter anymore in terms of the because we don't have special metal energy, but it means it's probably a little bit more compatible with Clink Clang, so I guess there's that. Metal will actually matter in the plasma sets, but you know, for now it's just whatever. It's got a resistance to Psychic, I guess that's cool. Heavy Ball searchable. The second attack is pretty bad, we don't really need to go into it, but the first attack is what you play it for. Triple Laser for 3 colorless energy, does 30 damage to 3 of the opponent's Pokemon. So it's like worse Glaciate, but it also only costs colorless energy, so you could DCE it if you want to. Honestly, like, I have read worse, and I have seen this card do some work, but I think you've got to be coping pretty hard at the moment for this to actually be, like, ridiculous. I think we're not really going to see it unless Pepper wants to do something stupid, but, I mean, at least the weakness is uncommon. Fire is not, like, very prevalent right now. Even with Emboar being around, you'd think it would be, but there's just not a ton of fire attackers outside of Reshiram, and Reshiram did better with Typhlosion than it did with Emboar. So yeah, there's not a lot that hits it for weakness, but at the same time it doesn't do a lot either, and it takes so much energy. Mewtwo is still going to do a very solid chunk to you, like 100 damage with 3 energy on both of you, so it's tough. Protect Charge only does 80 for 4 as well, which is ridiculous, even if 2 of them are colorless. Takes 20 less damage next turn, which works with its tanking. Like, Eviolite plus that would be pretty solid, but without special metal energy, I just don't think you can do that tanking anymore. So, yeah, pretty bad. Alright, on to the dragons, because they are good. Rayquaza EX, 170 HP, so on the frail side of your attacking EXs, but that's fine. 1 retreat cost, really good, because Sky Arrow Bridge is fantastic for the deck that plays it. Celestial Roar for 1 colorless discards the top 3 cards of your deck, and you can basically start reading there, but if you do have to use it, if any of those cards you discard their energy, you attach them to this Pokemon. Which is pretty solid because its attack requires a lot of energy for it to work. 1 fire, 1 lightning as the baseline here. Dragon Burst will do 60 for every energy you discard. You get to discard either all of your fire or all of your lightning. You cannot discard both. So obviously this pairs incredibly well with electric because it recycles energy out of the discard, right? If you play energy retrievals, you could use it with Emboar as well, but Emboar is a stage 2. It's like clunkier, right? Because the Emboar being a stage 2 makes it harder to get out, and you have to play energy retrieval. We've lost Fisherman, so you've really just got to play a ton of retrieval to get your stuff back. But you only need 1 Emboar in play at any given time. Unlike Electric, where you need 2 or possibly even 3 of them to get the KOs you want. This is a one-hit KO machine though. I think this is the first deck that we are seeing in the format that can one-hit KO EXs, which is a very big trait to have, but it takes a ton of work to get going. Don't expect the deck to fire every single time, and Sai is definitely going to show it off, but if it fires, it's amazing. If not, you know, it's very difficult to maintain. Giratina EX unfortunately isn't as good, but it does have one of the most common attacks on any dragon type in Shred, where for, in this case, 1 grass, 1 psychic, and 1 colorless, you do 90 damage and you ignore any effects on the defending Pokemon. So if they have agility, doesn't matter. If they have an Eviolite, doesn't matter. If they're taking 7,000 less damage, doesn't matter, you still do 90. 180 HP, free energy retreat on this as well, so it's heavy ball searchable. That's kind of cool. Just the energy costs are like unmanageable because grass and psychic don't have Excel right now. For Grass Psychic Double Colorless, you do 130 damage, which is very high for EXs right now, but you have to discard the top 3 cards of your own deck, so it's not something you can just spam. Shred is cool, but I don't know how you're powering this up most of the time, unfortunately. Shiny cards in here, we've got Superior, Reuniclus, just good reprints to have around, especially because they would stay in format now when Black and White rotates. Crocodile is not good, but it looks neat. I guess that's got itself something, I don't know. And Rayquaza is the other one here, like regular Ray. You play this alongside the EX because this one's actually really good in its own right too. 120 HP, 3 energy retreat costs, so it is a lot heavier, but you can Heavy Ball search it as a result, which is good for the Emboar version of the deck, since that has Heavy Ball searching in its nature anyway. So you're probably going to play a lot of Heavy Ball in there, so nice to have another target for it, I guess. Yeah, this one is used to kill other dragons in the Ray deck, basically, so you don't have to put your Ray in danger for it. Dragon Pulse for 1 lightning energy does a whopping 40 damage. 40 for 1 is really strong, but you do have to discard the top 2 cards of your deck, so it's not something you want to use too often, but I mean 40 HP is great against other electric decks, right? And 1 or 2 of the other decks we'll get into here as well. 40 HP is something that some basic evolution, like evolving basics, do still have, so yeah. And then it's got the same shred attack as Giratina, but this time it's for a Fire, a Lightning, and a Colorless, and it's on a non-EX, so that's fine. It should be noted that weakness is not an effect on the opponent's Pokemon, it is just inherent, so if you shred a Dragon type, it will do 180 damage. It means that if they have an Eviolite, it will do 180, not 140, for example. So, yeah, do not sleep on that attack. It is pretty insane, to be honest, in the deck that it's used for. On to the other stuff in here. There's a very funny Jumpluff that pairs with the Ambipom in this set. If you have the Jumpluff in play, you can just return it to your hand, which pairs with the Ambipom down here that for DCE does 10 damage for every card that's in your hand. Obviously this is far too low a number for it to matter, but it's neat, right? You put like 3 or 4 Jumpluff in play, you get your Ambipom DCE down, and then you bounce 2 or 3 of the Jumpluff back to hand. Suddenly your hand is almost 10 cards bigger, and you get a bunch out of it. Really bad otherwise, but you know, it's funny, so we'll go with it. Ninjask, I do remember seeing this with Silver Bangle later on, the Ninja thing. Only 60 HP is ridiculously small, but this guy isn't supposed to be getting attacked too often. When you bench this Pokemon, when you evolve it basically, you get Shedinja from your deck onto the bench. Kind of the same sort of power we've seen quite often with this family since it came out in Gen 3. But it works well here because Night Slash lets you switch to that Shedinja. For Grass Colorless you do 60, that would be 90 when Silver Bangle eventually comes out. And the Shedinja itself does not give up prize cards when it is KO'd. It also has 0 retreat, unlike the Ninjask somehow, so you get to switch back out to it as well. If you do want to attack with it, because Blend Energy can let you attack with either of these, Curse Drop for 1 Psychic Energy puts 3 damage counters on the opponent's Pokemon in any way that you like. This attack was actually useful in Gen 7, so it's definitely useful here as well. You can just spread a little bit around so that you can make KOs easier to obtain, so yeah. But it doesn't give up prizes, that's the main thing. Unfortunately, Catcher is a card that exists, right, so it's, you know, cool gimmick, but not reliable in the slightest here. There is a Roserade, that's not a very good one, but there is actually a good Roserade in here. 90 HP, so it's levelable, searchable, and its attack is bad, we don't care about that, but what we do care about is the ability, Le Parfum. When you play this from your hand to evolve one of your Pokemon, you may search your deck for any card and put it into your hand. That's right, you evolve into this and it's a computer search. Empoleon decks love this, any Stage 2 deck really likes having this because Rare Candy is a thing. It's just whether or not you can fit it is the main thing, but it's a very cool card, and I think this is the first and maybe only time where we actually see this ability be really good. And it's just the right situation for it, you know? We've just lost a bunch of consistency to the rotation. We have not got Skylar yet, so Stage 2 decks are still suffering from the lack of being able to find like Tropical Beach and or Red Candy, depending on what they're doing. And yeah, this card just helps. It's the fact that you can search it for free as well with Level Ball is really, really helpful. So yeah, I think it's just got a lot of stuff going for it that the old versions of it did not. And it's not competing with another card that's like Pidgeot in the case of what the Persian was. So yeah. There's a Vulpix that's really cute. It auto burns, which is actually relevant because the Ninetales, whilst it's not good right now, will be good when Hypnotoxic Laser comes out, and I'm looking forward to playing it. We're definitely playing Ninetales Amoonguss at that stage. Bright Look is, well, first off, it's 90 HP, so once again, level ball searchable. Bright Look is the same thing as what it was on Luxray GL level X, where you get to gust the opponent. It's Catcher, but on a coming into play ability. That's awesome. Outclassed by Catcher, unfortunately, so you don't normally see it in most decks right now because you just don't need it because you can play 4 Catcher, right? But it's actually not a terrible attacker in its own right as well. For 1 Fire Energy, which is on the blend cycle for Dark as well, and that's worth noting, Hexed Flame does 20 plus 50 for every special condition affecting the defending Pokemon. Now, we have seen this before in the Leafeon that I really tried to make work before, and eventually it did matter, it did come into play, but this will eventually have Hypnotoxic Laser that will give it either 70 or 120 if you flip heads for the sleep, right? Which is super, super good. And there is Amoonguss that we can evolve into as well. Also 90 HP, so also level ball searchable. And it lets you put the opponent to sleep, not to sleep, it confuses them and poisons them at the same time. So that guarantees the 120 that you would get here. 130 with the poison tick, so not enough to really score knockouts on EXs right now, which is why it's not super great. Also slightly short on stage 2s as well, so a little bit early. But when we get Verbank and Laser and stuff like that, it's going to be great. Do keep in mind you can reuse this power or the Amoonguss's power with the Devolution Spray that's in this set as well. And Sableye exists on the dark part of the blend, so you don't have to play as many dark energies and stuff, and you can recover Devolution Sprays, Verbanks and stuff like that. So yeah, it's going to be really good. Just, okay, not Verbank, it's the laser you recover. Whatever, details. It's going to be really good, just not immediately, because the support isn't quite there yet. Bad Debt Monday material, basically. Speaking of Bad Debt Monday material, this Wailord is not, like, good ever, but it will be a fun meme deck next set. 200 HP, once again, massive on the Wailord. It's heavy ball searchable, just like the Wailmer is, actually. Wailmer is not level ball searchable, sadly, but heavy ball is pretty good in the Blastoise, you know, Wailord deck. As much as I wouldn't necessarily say that, but whatever. Water Cannon. For every water energy you have on this thing, you flip a coin, and if heads, it does 30 damage per heads that you flip. So Blastoise next set is going to be another Rain Dancer. It's Deluge, it's just going to be able to Rain Dance wherever you want, just like Emboar can for Fire Energy. And yeah, you load this up with 5-6 energy and you just flip as many heads as you can, basically. Victini obviously can help reflip, so it is a little bit more consistent than it would look. And yeah, it's dopey looking, probably the dumbest Wailord artwork we've had so far, but at the very least, it's got something it can do. If you need reliable damage for, you know, non-meme reasons, 1 water, 3 colors to do 80, and you can't use that giant wave next turn. So not amazing, but yeah, it's fun, and it's got a lot of HP, right? 200 HP, 1 Prizer. No EXs hit 200 HP, so this thing's still bigger than all the EXs in the format. So that's kinda cool. Milotic would be neat, but N exists, and also Phoebus is 30 HP, which is very terrible. But for 1 water energy, Clear Search lets you search your deck for any 3 cards and put them into hand. This attack is actually somewhat relevant in the future with stuff like Sylveon GX, but that's in a much different format. I don't think we quite have the same disruption level here, and also it's a 30 HP basic. If the opponent gets the Night Spear on turn 1, and god forbid next set they can Hammerhead on turn 1 because it's 1 energy, this thing just dies immediately. So unfortunately completely useless, but it's cool, you know, it tries. Ampharos is neat. We're not going to see it this time because I think we've been burned on this too much. 140 HP, weakness to fighting is rough because, you know, electric type and whatnot, but its ability is cool. If it's the active Pokemon, whenever the opponent attaches an energy from their hand, you put 3 damage counters on the Pokemon they attach to, which is fun. Electro Bullet for Lightning Double Colorless is a little bit short here, I think. 70 damage to the active, 20 to one of the opponent's bench. That's like passable, I suppose, but 70 is just too low at this point. For like Lightning Double Colorless, that's still too hard to work with. So yeah, for a stage 2 to be good now, it has to be absolutely insane, and this just isn't it. I personally like the Manectric in this set. I know it's not great, but Energy Crush is kinda cool. This actually does come up on a different typing later on. 1 Lightning Energy, 20 damage for every energy that's on all of the opponent's Pokemon. Some decks will get wrecked by that. Most of them aren't in the format right now, however, so yeah. 90 HP, 0 retreat, so levelable, searchable, pretty useful there, but otherwise just nah. Energy Assist on the other Manectric would be really good because it's attached to basic energy from discard, but it's on a stage 1, so just not going to happen there. Mulgar, on the other hand, is most definitely going to be useful. This is used in a lot of setup decks as we go forward. 70 HP, so levelable, searchable. Core for Family is generic on any deck, and because we can attack going first, we finally have something we can do that isn't just like try and donk the opponent, I suppose. Search your deck for up to 2 basic Pokemon and put them onto the bench. Shuffle the deck afterwards. Very good. We've lost our dual balls and stuff like that, so this is a really welcome change actually. You play level ball, you could search this out anyway, you retreat to this hopefully with a switch, play your energy down onto it, and you just get your stuff. It also doesn't have a retreat cost of its own, so it's really easy to get out afterwards as well. It's not a catcher target in terms of stopping you from switching. It's not like a stall tactic. And if you play Energy Switch, you could get that energy back off it later on anyway. So yeah, really, really good card for setup decks. Drifblim is kind of neat in later formats when we have more special energy emphasis. We do have special energies at the moment, but they're just a bit landlocked right now, and most decks aren't going to take that much advantage of them. Shadow Steel lets you do 50 damage for 1 colorless energy per special energy that's in the opponent's discard pile. So this is where Enhanced Hammer would technically be better than Lost Remover if it was still in format, is that you could just discard the energy and then have it go from there. Plasma decks later on tend to suffer greatly against us because they often just play special energy. You can play basic energy versions, but they're not as flexible. So yeah, you'll see quite a lot of this if you are weak to Plasma later on as a tech. Plentiful Placement is fine. 4 damage counters on one of the opponent's Pokemon, but it takes Psychic Colorless, which is a little bit too heavy. 100 HP as well, so it's not level ball searchable. So a little bit hard to access, but still very, very good. Sigilif is a neat card to have around because it's our first instance in this era of Safeguard, where you don't take any damage or any attack effects from EX Pokemon. 90 HP, so it's levelable, searchable. That's obviously very, very good in a format that doesn't have dual ball. And, well, it's just a good blocker. Forces the opponent to catch her around it, right? If you want to attack with it, Psychic for a Psychic of 2 colors does 50, plus 10 for every energy that's on the defending Pokemon. That can counter Overzealous Mewtwo, but they do need 4 energy on themselves, because it doesn't count your own energy, obviously. So they need 4 energy on them to actually get KO'd by this. So don't count on it, but it's still pretty neat. And yeah, there's a lot of EXs do take like free energy to attack at the moment, so this is gonna do 70 to 80 to most things. And it forces decks to play something that can out this. Maybe that thing, however, will be Garbodor, which, oh boy. Okay, this is, in my opinion, the balanced version of Muck, where the Muck just did this effect, or when it was active, it just did this effect. Garbotoxin requires a Pokemon tool attached to the Garbodor for it to activate. When it does though, each Pokemon in play, in each player's hand, and in each player's discard pile do not have abilities, except for Garbotoxin. So, obviously this means no Rebirth, this means no Diving Draw, this means no Dynamote or Acceleration. Yeah, a lot of gross stuff, but we did just get Tool Scrapper in this set as well. So it is nasty, but at the very least it is possible to work with it, right? Because it's like you can play Tool Scrapper to ditch it. It also has a free energy retreat cost, which, yeah, Heavy Ball searchable, that's great, but most of the decks that play this will not really have the Pokemon that want Heavy Ball. Not yet, anyway. Lander CX will change that, but most of the time you're going to see this in decks that will play stuff like Darkrai, like Mewtwo, Tornadus potentially, and those don't necessarily have the ways of like constantly keeping this off the bench, more or less. Like, you do have Switch, and that's your best bet, right? But between Catcher and just killing the Garbodor, as well as Tool Scrapper, you have outs in ability reliant decks like Electric to actually make this not completely game ending. But it is disruptive enough where you can just get hosed by it. And if you're too greedy in deck building, then you will get hosed by it as well. I actually kind of like the way this is designed, because yes, it's a floodgate, but it's a floodgate that both has outs and also isn't in this era isn't necessarily the be all and end all, right? It's not like it's an item lock as well, which would be really disgusting, right? So I like it. I like its presence here because it keeps decks honest. You can't just spam all the most powerful abilities ever and just have like no consequences, because then it just becomes a numbers game, right? Which number is bigger than the other. But this kind of disruption I'm okay with. I know we've been very negative on a lot of Floodgate stuff in the past, but I genuinely think this one is actually a bit more balanced. On to a bad card, because we've got to discuss the memes as well, right? The famous Flips deck actually used this Gothitelle for Doom Decree. For one Psychic in the Colorless, you flip 2 coins, and if both were heads, the defending Pokemon is KO'd. Victini gives you 1 extra flip, so you've got about a 40-ish, just over 40% chance of this working. And it's very funny. Not very good, obviously, but hey. Black Magic is actually alright though. 40 damage for Psychic Double Colorless is really bad, but it does do 20 more for each of the opponent's bench, and a lot of the times the opponent's going to have to bench quite a bit, so it's not unreasonable for this to easily do 100 damage. It could go as far as 140, which is a lot. So yeah, it's relatively solid as a second attack, but it's just on a stage 2, so, you know, rip on that front. There's a Marowak in here which has got a couple of interesting attacks. I think I remember seeing this later on because it beats Darkrai. 100 HP, so it's not level ball searchable. That kind of sucks. But Bone Lock is pretty solid. 1 fighting, 30 damage, opponent can't retreat next turn. And Vortex Chop for fighting double colorless does 60, but if the opponent has got any resistance, it does 30 more damage. Obviously, if they're fighting resistant, that means it does 70, but if they're resistant to something else, like Psychic, say every Steel type and Dart type, then you'll do 90 to them instead, which is, yeah, if you're hitting for weakness on a Dart type, that is exactly where you want to go. The other fighting type in the set that's interesting is Stunfisk. This is the poor man's Landorus CX, but we don't have Landorus CX just yet. 100 HP, free energy to retreat, so heavy ball searchable, and Muddy Water for 1 fighting does 20 damage, and 20 to one of the opponent's bench. Little amount of damage, but the little spread can sometimes matter, and those 20s can really make it so that your big attacks actually score a knockout where they otherwise wouldn't. Also, it one-shots a Dynamo because of weakness, so keep that in mind. Rumble is also really good though for a fighting in the colors to do 40 and prevent the opponent retreating next turn. So if they don't have a hard switch and you manage to capture in something that they can't attack with immediately, they're just going to be stuck, and that's pretty great. Honchkrow, the last part of the meme deck with Salamence and Hooligans. Whirlwind, kind of whatever, but double colorless 30 damage, sure, force the opponent to switch if you want to. It's optional now, which is kind of nice. 110 HP is also quite big, a lot bigger than the Mandibuzz right now, so that actually helps the Zoroark deck a little bit, because now you have a fighting resistance that you can go into. Diving Swipe for Dark in 2 colors to 70, and it discards a random card for your opponent's hand, which is fine. Like, it's not the greatest thing out there, but it's fighting resistant and a Dark type, so that actually can help a little bit. Also, just being a bit disruptive, right? Sometimes that can be what you need. On to the memes again. Aggron over here lets you discard the top 3 cards of the opponent's deck when you evolve into it. That's pretty much it. Unfortunately, the Aron is only a 2 energy retreat, so you can't heavy ball search it like you can the other parts. But Lairon is 90 HP and 3 energy to retreat, so it's level and heavy ball searchable. So there's quite a bit of searchability in this deck if you want there to be. You're never attacking with this guy, so you can just play Sableye for Junk Hunt and just get all of your stuff back as much as you can. It's kind of cool. 3 cards might not be enough though, as far as the mill per stage 2 goes. But if you get multiple Lairons set up in play, you'd be able to go evolve an Aggron, Devo Spray, evolve to Aggron, Devo Spray for every one that you've got, right? So it's neat. Durant is probably just better, right? But hey, DNA is desperately trying to stop me playing this, and he's probably gonna manage it, but you know, it's cool. I could see it being played as a gimmick. And then, yeah, there's one colorless Pokemon worth noting before we talk about the dragons here. Bouffalance, once again, gets a good card here. The Bouffer ability lets you reduce all damage done to it by 20. It is unfortunately just out of the range of searchability, 100 HP, 2 energy retreat, so you have to Ultra Ball search this, but oh well. Goldbreaker is a respectable attack as well. For 3 colorless energy, you only do 60 damage, but if the defending Pokemon is an EX, it does 60 more. So rip Mew, because that dies in 1 hit, but 120 to any EX for any free energy, or DCE plus something, right? You can play this in a lot of different decks, but particularly decks with DCE and Energy Switch are really good for this. I could even see Darkrai Garbodor playing this actually, because you could often play like a Mewtwo in that deck as well or something, and it'd be pretty good. So yeah, lots of good stuff that you could do with it. Any Accelerant deck will love it as well, so yeah. And now finally the dragons, because there's most of them in here actually are pretty solid. Like every evolution line in here has got at least something going for it. Altaria gives your dragon types 20 extra damage on their attacks, to the active Pokemon specifically, not to the bench. Altaria's problem has always been that Swablu is not a dragon type in the games, so if you are to play it, you need to play a colorless Pokemon here as well. That does hurt the deck that it plays in, but it is still a vital part of it to up the damage numbers, so, because that deck is Garchomp. We want to talk about the Gabite first, because Dragon Call is what brings the whole thing together. We have seen this ability before with Sunflora, and actually Beedrill as well. And in the Beedrill deck it worked super well because the Beedrill was an attacker as well, like the other Beedrill. In Sunflora didn't really have anything that was super good with it because Jumpluff didn't end up needing it to actually make it work. but because this is part of an evolution line and that's attacking, this ability becomes insane. Once during your turn before you attack, search your deck for a dragon Pokemon, put it into hand. So if you can get a bunch of Gibble out turn 1 and then go evolve one of them to Gabite, you can Dragon Call for Gabite. It's the Elemental Hero Stratos thing all over again. Dragon Call for Gabite, which then evolves to Dragon Call for Gabite, which then evolves to Dragon Call for whatever, right? Another Gibble maybe, so you can get your stuff down. Wouldn't really matter if the Garchomp wasn't worth it, but oh boy is the Garchomp kind of worth it. 140 HP, 1 retreat, so reasonable stats. And this is what basically every stage tune should be, really. Cheap attacking for reasonable damage, and well, it's got an engine and it can help buff. So yeah, for 1 fighting energy you do 60 damage and discard the special energy on the defending Pokemon. This is literally Machamp Prime's attack for 2 colorless less. Oh boy, that's power creep for you just within half a generation, right? Dragon Blade for a water and a fighting energy. Keep in mind blend energy fuels both of those. You do 100 damage and then discard the top 2 cards of your deck. Most of the time you're just using Marker Cut here, and with 2 Altaria in play, that's 100 damage that 2-shots any EXs. EXs generally will have a hard time one-shotting you, so you're able to do quite good numbers with that as well. And then if you need a KO, say against an opposing stage 2 or something, Dragon Blade with a couple of Altaria in play does 140, which is enough to KO most of them. So yeah, good stuff all around. Then we have the Dino line. The regular Dragon Dino here has got Deep Growl, so paralysis on a coin flip, that can matter. You usually play more of this one because of the weakness to fighting that's on the previous Dino, but this one dies in 1 hit to Rayquaza, like the Baby Ray, so a mix of them is recommended in the deck. Let's just put it that way. This is the better dragon one, so that's the one you use. Swilus, there is actually one that if you have to attack with it, it's heavy ball searchable. I guess if you play that, that's kind of cool. Draw In lets you attach 2 dark energy from your discard pile to this Pokemon. Very dangerous, but if you have to, if you don't have anything else you can really do that turn, this can actually be useful. Because the Hydreigon, for a massive 150 HP here, has Dark Trance that lets you transfer your dark energies around. So Kling Clang, but for Dark types. The key difference is that Dark types also have Dark Patch and natively have Darkrai, so they don't suffer from the Rainbow energy loss anymore. Not nearly as much anyway. 1 Psychic, 2 Dark, and 1 Colorless is its attack cost here, but again, Blend Energy does the Psychic and Dark at the same time, so you can still transfer it, but it does the Psychic energy too. 140 damage. So this is your 1 prize attacker against other 1 prizes, and then you discard 2 dark energy on this Pokemon. Does not have to be like the blend energy, so you can discard the basic darks and then dark patch them back next turn. Very, very cool. Just insane actually how quickly this ended up being a really, really strong deck. And Darkrai Hydreigon was one of the main decks I played when I first came into the game again, so I might. We'll see how it goes, because I do like me some Hydreigon. Funnily enough, way back actually, before we even got past like the 2nd generation, Sai and I did a mock draft of the 2013 format, so black and white through to Plasma Freeze, and the deck that I was able to make was a very close to competitive tier of Darkrai Hydreigon. Like, I didn't play the max potions because I don't think I pulled any. Or if I did, I just didn't choose to. But I have Avenge somewhere. I'll test, I think. Well, no, it's to be in the mod draft. We have a deck that I constructed out of our actual draft format at that point. So, had we continued into draft going through, you know, the recent gens, we could have had something like this. We're not quite here yet, obviously, because Plasma Freeze was a thing, so there's a fair few cards in here we can't use yet, and I didn't pull very many Dark Patch, so there is that. But yeah, this is the kind of thing that you can build with Hydreigon, and it's very neat, to say the least. So that is it. That is everything from Dragons Exalted, and as you can tell by the video length, this ended up being a rather interesting one to talk about. A lot of good stuff coming out of this set. And yeah, it's exciting. Like, the rotation obviously is going to make things a little bit harder to play for a bit. It is going to slow the format down, which is good, but going to make things a little bit harder to play because consistency is just not quite as strong as it used to be. But there's a ton of interesting decks to play here. It isn't exclusively EX focused. A lot of the evolutions in this set are actually pretty solid as well, so that's a good thing. Kind of wish the entire format could have just been like this, but hey, it's not the worst. And yeah, lots of interesting ideas to go on here as well. Decks do play rather differently from each other as you go, so I'm looking forward to it. Hopefully you guys are as well. And yeah, thanks for watching. Until next time, take care.